Oh, God. Welcome back to CarFoolery's June the Jeep series. By this point, Dana had been driving the Jeep for a few weeks now, so we had learned about a few new issues to take care of. So let's get right back into it by popping the hood so we can make it good. Welcome to day 2 of the adventure. We're going to fix just a couple things. It's probably going to turn into a power steering episode at some point. But before we do that, we're going to reconnect this ground because it's not connected. All Dana and I needed to do here was undo these 2 bolts, throw the negative wire back inside, and bolt it back up again. Ground fixed. So we've noticed that the power steering is low on fluid often, so we're trying to figure out where it's leaking from. So the first thing we did off camera was we sprayed everything down with a hose and then cleaned it by hand. Another thing that we did was we removed the air box, which we'll show you at some point how to do. Okay. Pop fucker out. You're not wearing your glove.
Nope.
Then how are you going to protect yourself from getting cut?
Alright, yep. It's a lot harder than I really should.
We remove the air box to get a really good hand in there to clean everything really well, because you want to be able to see where it's leaking from, so that way you can replace just the one bad part instead of doing things like I would do it and replacing everything, which costs you more money. But if you're smart like Dana, you just figure out what the actual problem is and fix the problem, not the entire system. So we just topped it off. We just made sure fluid's in it. We're gonna have Dana start the Jeep up with the engine on. We're gonna look around, see if we can see any leaks. And then if we're not seeing any leaks, we're gonna have her crank the wheel all the way, which is gonna make a bad sound. And it's also gonna create a massive amount of pressure in the system, which will cause more leaks. So we'll be able to see where it leaks from a lot better. You ready, babe? So, like I said before, we removed the air box, which is usually here, so that way we could get to this line, and we cleaned everything up really nicely. So go ahead and start it. All right, now before you turn anything, we're gonna look for leaks. All right, so go ahead and turn the wheel all the way. Oh, Jesus! Jesus! All right, so come out here. Yeah. You see it?
What is the matter with it?
So now we know. The line is bad.
We have that one, don't we?
I think we have that one even. So we were putting the air filter box back in, and I realized, sketchy enough, the air box has been dancing with its neighbor, forbidden neighbor, the electrical wires. And over time, this is probably going to create a bunch of problems, and maybe even a couple danger problems, whatever you call that, risks, I don't know. So we're going to take this back out and wrap the shit out of this with more electrical tape, which isn't the right thing to do, but it's the thing to do right now. All right, so I guess that means that we have a CarFoolery electrical tape moment in this episode, which is the wrapping of the loom. Now, it doesn't want to give us a whole lot of space to work with, so you gotta manhandle it. And unlike the 240SX video, which hopefully you've seen, I'm not gonna just have 10 inches and cut it loose and try to finagle it. No, we're gonna keep it all together on the roll, and we're just gonna go up and down it a couple times. And this was the area that was actually damaged, so we'll put the most there, and then it is going to be fucking ready for another 124,000 miles. Ow!
Oh god.
So now that we know where the leak is, it is leaking from 1,600 different spots in the high pressure line. Oh, Jesus! So we're going to fix it by replacing the high pressure line with a brand new one from AutoZone. I think this was like 25 bucks. And while we're doing that, we're also going to replace the low pressure line, which I don't think was leaking, but fuck it, let's do it anyways. It was $19.99 before discounts and coupons. So not a very expensive job. And all we're gonna need are end wrenches, I believe, and pliers. We're gonna show you how to do it right now. The first thing to do here was to remove this hose clamp and then to pull the hose off of the tip of the reservoir. If you're gonna be firm trying to remove one of these hoses, just make sure you don't break that old plastic on the reservoir. It can be a real nightmare. Where? You can fly. You could be anywhere in the world right now. Why would you choose to be here? Why do you? So yeah, like I said, a total nightmare. Oh, that sucks.
What?
Well, we broke part of it, but I think that'll be okay, because I think when we put the new one on, we can just put it on what's left of that. And if not, we can buy you a new reservoir. And by we, I mean me. There wasn't enough of the plastic nipple left for us to attach the hose onto it, so that left us with only one choice. We calmly drove to AutoZone and bought ourselves a new one. Alright, so we just got back from AutoZone with our new reservoir. As you can see, sometimes plastic, when it gets really old and it's been getting hot and cold 1,000 times, plastic gets pretty brittle. Back to what we were doing, we got to get the lines off first, and then we're going to tackle replacing that reservoir, which we didn't have to do, but now we have to do it because I fucked everything up. So let's get back to it. Also, I did already drain all the fluid out. I put a bucket underneath to catch all of it. The fluid looks absolutely disgusting, so maybe it was actually a good thing that I fucked everything up by breaking it. So anyways, that's done leaking, so now we can get back into it. More reason to never let my dad see this video using an adjustable wrench. Which adjustable wrenches are sketchy because they don't fit very well, and so you usually end up ruining the hexagon shape, and you turn it into a circle, and then it never ever works again. And then you can never remove it, and then you can never put it back on. And then you're just fucked. And then you give up. And then you buy a new Yaris.
Ah.
And then that should give us better access to the high pressure line. Okay. Perfect. Alright, and if I hadn't fucked up the reservoir, I would be halfway done right now. Get the fluid off the paint. We don't know if it's bad for paint or not.
It's not like the paint's any good anyway.
But it's still there though, so it's good enough to keep. Alright. The many swivel side is the one that goes on top, which means that this piece with the relatively simple looking bend goes onto the steering rack, and it comes with these gaskets that are probably really important so that it doesn't leak, which is the whole reason we're doing this. Gasket on there. See a little green guy? We have no idea what the torque spec rating is going to be. So look it up online yourself. Don't want to over tighten it because then you're gonna fucking break it and then you're gonna be fucked. Super fucked. Like you won't have steering fucked. You don't want to be that kind of fucked. Low pressure line. Pop that gasket on there again. Now I just gotta tighten that. It was finally time to tackle removing the reservoir, so I went with my usual technique of just undoing every nut and bolt that I could see, starting with this one, the tensioner bolt, and then moving right along to the fan. Why is it so long? Then we loosened this other 13mm bolt that holds the tension for the pump. And then we could move back to the actual tensioner bolt and keep going. With enough slack on the accessory bolt, we could pull it off of the power steering pump. But before we do that, it's very important to pay attention to how this belt is oriented. And to make sure that we can put everything back together correctly when we're done, I'm just going to fold the belt over on itself so that it stays put. Then we remove the bolt that holds the top of the pump on. And finally, the very bottom bolt, and it comes right off. Next step. This is why we removed it. We need to get these off. And I think I know how they work. To get the tabs off that hold on the reservoir, you can use a screwdriver like this and just pry the tabs, and then they can slide right off. Broken thing. Gone. And of course we made sure to install the new gasket O-ring. And push it in. And we gently reinstalled those metal tabs. And now, excitingly enough, that means we can reinstall the power steering pump. We grabbed the hose clamp off the old low pressure line and installed it on the new low pressure line. Then we sprayed a tiny bit of silicone lubricant onto the hose and the barb so that they'd slide on really easily.
That is the power of lube.
Next, we got to reinstall the high pressure line, making sure to put on the new O-ring. When it came tight to re-tension the belt, I went with the method of making it tight enough that it's difficult to turn at 90 degrees. If you ever hear the belt go, that means we have to twist. We gave the bolts that hold the pump on a final tightening. That's all done. And then it was time to reinstall the air conditioning fan. The Jeep only had one screw to hold the fan on, and the other side was held on by a zip tie. So I grabbed a new one and we made it happen. And now down to the final step, refilling the reservoir and bleeding the air bubbles out. First I checked for any leaks that might be happening, which there wasn't any, thankfully. And then we turned the wheel all the way to one side and then all the way to the other side a few times, and that made sure that we got all the air out of the system. And thank the Lord, the power steering is back and better than ever. Now we get to reinstall the airbox, and this power steering project is all wrapped up. Don't forget to plug in the mystery hose. Lastly, for this episode, we're going to tackle the speedometer not working. 99% of the time, it wouldn't actually read what speed you were going. It would just kind of flail around a little bit. On Amazon, we found this part for around $16. I think AutoZone wanted to charge us around $120 for something, but we decided that this Amazon choice was so cheap that how could it possibly go wrong? So we unplugged and unscrewed the old speed sensor and threw this one on, and as you can see, the $16 bet paid off. How cool is that? Well, we just get a bunch of B-roll, you know.